Hi, if you're just starting out on your guitar journey and getting to grips with some of the basics, then one of the biggest challenges you'll find early on is playing chords cleanly and clearly, and then moving to a next chord at the right time, cleanly and clearly. So in this video, I thought I'd just look at some of the very commonest chord changes. There are something like 15 pairs of chords that are worth looking at. And often you'll find there's a detail in the first chord that can help you find the second chord and maybe move a bit more efficiently and accurately at the right time. But before we do this, let's just take a quick look at a decent left-hand position. This is the key here. If you want to give yourself a real gift, take a moment to look at a sustainable, comfortable, effective hand position for the left hand. And my thumb is the key here. My thumb is kind of hanging just at the back of the neck. I'm not pushing hard. I'm just holding with friction there. That gives me plenty of room for my fingers to come down perpendicular to the fingerboard. I've got a nice gap here, if you can see that. Let me just get into position. There's kind of a hole here. You could pass a couple of fingers through. That's good. You want that. You don't want this where the hand is kind of rammed up against the bottom of the neck. That's nice. The elbow and shoulder are hanging kind of loosely. The wrist is nice. It's all loose. You know, that's the thing. It's comfortable. And of course, you want to see what you're doing. But as soon as you tilt the guitar towards you, you can see what happens. I've compromised that good position. My thumb is in the wrong place. My shoulder and elbows all cramped up. My neck is craning. My back's all, and I've lost the good position. So that's the irony, I suppose. As soon as you look to see what you're doing the wrong thing. So maybe try and get used to having the front of the guitar out where you can't actually see what you're playing. You're going to rely on your hearing and your feel. And eventually it's just muscle memory that's going to make your fingers fall in the right place. So have a think about that. And of course, you'll see my thumb ride up from time to time. Don't judge me too harshly. Don't do as I do. But keeping your thumb down and being aware of that will give you a really good chance to get your fingers in the right position smoothly and quickly. Okay, let's crack on. Here's a very simple chord shape. This is Am7. My first finger's on the first fret of the second string, and my second finger is on the second fret of the fourth string. I'm going to play 5 strings, Am7. And a really common chord that you'll hear around Am7 is E7. And take a little look. Both of these fingers are moving together. Try and avoid the idea of one going out in advance and the other one then following. That just takes ages. See if you can keep these fingers almost as though they're kind of stitched together and going together up and down like this. And there are lots of chord shapes that you'll find this first and second finger are in this position, variations on that. There's A minor, there's C, there's D minor. All these have this same kind of idea. Okay, we'll look a bit more at those in a moment, but for now, Am7 to E7. And just while we're here, let's put that third finger behind the second finger on the third string, second fret. Now we've got A minor. Likewise to E7. And yeah. And yeah. There you go. First 2 bars of the Rolling Stones' Angie. That's all you're going to get. But that's A minor and E7. A good real-world example of that chord change in action. Okay, back to Am7. And this time we're going to swing round to D7. My first finger is staying put, and the second finger comes up, and then the third finger joins on that kind of triangle shape. We'll come back to this triangle when we're looking at B7 in a moment, but for now, Am7 to D7. Again, a very common chord change. I can tell by your eyes that you've probably been crying forever. That kind of thing. Am7, D7. Okay, and still with Am7, if we put the third finger down, we've got a C chord. Really, really common chord change. And if we go from C to A minor, then it's just a question of moving that third finger and tucking it in behind the second finger. Okay, that's C. Another very common place to go to from C is G7, and I kind of like the way this change looks. There's C, and I'm just going to kind of explode that shape, if you like. These two fingers are going to come up a string, or down a string, I should say, and this one is going to go up a string. C to G7. Jambalaya, crowfish pie, Philly gumbo. For tonight I'm gonna see my Jeremio. Okay, a really common chord change. That's C and G7 together. Okay, moving on. Let's look at E minor. Now, if you're tempted to play E minor with the first and second fingers, maybe think about using the second and third fingers. Not least of all because there are lots of chords that you'll play in conjunction with E minor where it makes the best sense to keep that second finger on the second fret of the fifth string. B7 is one of those. Now, if you're not familiar with B7 or you have trouble finding it, let's look at this. D7, that we saw a moment ago, and just move that down a couple of strings until it's here with your first finger on the fourth string, and then just add the little finger there. So that triangle at the bottom of a B7 is exactly the same as a D7 triangle. Like a river flows surely to the sea, darling, so it goes. Some things are meant to be. Wise men say. Thank you very much. Okay, E minor, B7. Another really common chord change. Okay, moving on. Here's A. And I use my second, third and fourth fingers for this. Some people will use the first, second and third. I don't even really know why I prefer to play it this way, but I do. Maybe because the little finger's a bit smaller and creates a bit more room with all the fingers kind of smushed together on the fingerboard. Anyway, an A chord happens in conjunction with an E7 a lot. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved. A, E7, A. So get used to it because there's a lot of that. Another chord that happens around A a lot is D. And again, you've probably got a couple of choices of fingering here. Some people will play it with the first finger at the top here. I know James Taylor plays it this way, and I generally play it this way, but I teach it, don't do as I do, with the first finger down on the third string. It's actually just a little bit more efficient. I think I learned to play this as a kid and I've just stuck with this. So up to you. It might be easier if you're going to D minor, but that's not a common chord change. Anyway, D here and A here. And you know, I've got notes on my screen here with put the first finger here or keep the second, or all this stuff. For D and A, I've literally just got just learn it. So again, that's one of those that you'll just have to create a bit of muscle memory for that. Just do it over and over. But because it's one of the commonest chord changes, this one really is worth learning. However, if you're playing D to A7, and I'm using my second and third fingers here, there is a trick. With the third finger on the second string for D, you can just kind of slide that finger down for A7. So that's a useful common change. Likewise, D minor to A7. D minor, A7, that third finger is just sliding down. Okay, let's look at a chord of G. Now, there are a couple of ways you might finger this. This is the way I prefer to do it, and actually, in the context of the kind of chords you're likely to go to from G, with my little finger here, second and third fingers down here, and I'm not using my first finger. I can get to C, I can get to A minor, I can get to E minor, or B7. Those are all fairly common changes from and to G. The alternative perhaps is to play it this way with the first, second and third fingers, not using the little finger. I think some beginners gravitate towards this because the idea of using the little finger up here without much kind of power or accuracy or speed, that might be a bit too much of a challenge. But I'd persevere with that. Personally, I reckon if you can play the G chord with the little finger up on the top string and these two fingers here, and you'll see it's just a variation on G7 really. And we're happy to play G7 this way. So just putting the little finger there, replacing the first finger on the top string, there's G. And, you know, do yourself a favour and look at your hand position here. That should really help. I suggest persevering with this G. I mean, if you want to play this way, that's fine. But look how much movement there is from G to C, for instance. Whereas if I play G this way, not too much. Okay, so let's have a look at G to E minor. I'm going to swing across, keeping my second finger in position. And we can couple this move between G and E minor with a move from C to A minor, for instance, in Bob Marley's Redemption song. It just plays those four chords like 4 times through, I think, in the verse. Oh, pirates, yes, they rob I, sold I to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pits. My hand was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. Forward in this generation, triumphant. Then it goes to D7, Lee, won't you help to sing? And if you just look at the hand here, now that we know a smooth way to move, you can see my fingers really aren't doing very much. G to E minor, then reset for C to A minor. That's a really good song to practice early on. Lots of good, useful, common changes in there. All right, almost there. Last couple of things now. D minor 7. And this isn't an easy chord to find or play. Those 3 fingers crammed in at the top of the neck there. Some people will play the first finger across 2 strings to make a bar. I think I prefer to play it this way. Now D minor 7, not such a common chord, but you will find it a lot in the context of G7. And here you can keep the first finger fixed on the top string first fret. Okay. So the last one I have for you is E minor 7 to A7. It's like D minor 7, G7, but in a different key. Here we go. A few different ways of playing E minor 7, but this is a satisfying chord to play on a 6-string guitar. There's a nice acoustic sound with all those open strings. I've got my second finger on the 5th string where it would be for E minor. I'm taking the 3rd finger away and I'm putting a little finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. Now I'm going to A7. Again, there's not a huge amount here that you can focus on, but the 2nd string on the 2nd finger on the 5th string, moving up to the 4th string, that should help you. That's E minor 7 to A7. Okay, well that's just a quick look at some of the very commonest chord changes you'll be playing as a beginner guitarist. And my top tip before I leave you is, as long as you're reading the music off the page, the lyrics and the chords or whatever, that actually becomes the main thing that you're doing. If you can manage to memorize songs or memorize 4-bar blocks or little bits, and recognizing chord changes should help you with this, then you'll have much more energy and focus for how it sounds, keeping the beat, playing accurately, listening to yourself, thinking ahead, singing if you do that, playing with other people. All that requires its own kind of attention and focus, and reading the music off the page is just going to inhibit that. So if you can see these chord changes ahead of time, you see a bar of C and you see a bar of A minor following it, then you know you're going to do that. So you kind of learn that almost as a single unit, if you like. Yeah, so a little bit of memorizing is going to stand you in good stead. and keep your thumb down here. All right, lots of patience and good luck.